Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. I'm Sophie Devonshire and I'm the Chief Executive of the Marketing Society, and I'm delighted to be hosting part 8 in our series of global conversations today. We started this series last April, which was at the start of the first lockdown in the UK. Feels like a very long time ago, but also feels like yesterday. But across the year, we've had some really lovely feedback from our members about these global conversations. And we know that you're enjoying it when we bring in different perspectives and stories from around the world. Our Global Conversation series allows marketers to explore the opportunities and the challenges that are currently being presented to us at a global level. We talked about the economy, brand survival, long-term impact and sustainability, and lots of different topics and conversations. We talk about the issues that are affecting marketers right now at a global and a local level. And each month we discuss one topic that's at the forefront of marketers' minds. And this month we have a question to be discussed. Today, the topic we're discussing is marketing sexist? We are going to be exploring today how much marketing has truly changed for women and explore if there's been a shift in the portrayal of masculinity and if there's more to be done on the way gender identities are depicted. As marketers, we have both an opportunity and a responsibility to drive change and shift mindsets within our industry and the world. Before we get started, always at our Marketing Society events, I'd like to encourage a little bit of interactivity. We love hearing from you. Hello, Sandra from sunny Berkshire. Brilliant to hear from you. Come and be like Sandra. Come and say hello on chat. Give us your comments as we go all the way through. Tell us what you think. And please do ask our speakers questions, as what they say may provoke you to ask some more questions of them. You'll see the Q&A function is there. So please put your questions on the Q&A functions and come in and say hi on the chat. And I'd like to just see what you're all thinking today and to ask you all for a very quick poll. I'm going to be asking a question now, which is going to pop up in a poll. Tell us what you think. Do you think marketing is sexist? Well, of course, this isn't a fully representative bit of research, and there's probably a slightly biased audience here as well. I'm not taking its accurate search, but very interesting to see that, what is it now, 91% of you think that marketing is sexist. Thank you very much for sharing that. Now, we are going to see what our contributors think about this. Today we have with us Jane Cunningham, who is author of the brilliant book, Brandsplaining, Why Marketing is Still Sexist and How to Fix It. Hello, Jane.
Hi there. Hello, everybody.
She's not going to say this, so I'm going to say it. I would strongly recommend reading Brandsplaining. It's a brilliant book, just come out. It's packed full of insights. It's funny, it's well written. It's a really good read. I think we'll probably be sharing the link on Zoom, but it's a great book. And Jane is a great person who has also co-run the consultancy Pretty Little Head for many years, advising all kinds of organisations on the best way to communicate to women. So I know that she is going to give us some great insight today. We'll also be joined in a moment by Fernando Desouches. I can't speak, I'm sorry. Managing Director of New Macho at BBD Perfect Storm. And he's going to be exploring what's happening in terms of masculinity in marketing. Hello, Fernando.
Hello, Sophie. How are you? Jane, how are you doing?
Hello. Hi, Fernando.
And last but not least on our brilliant panel today, we have Shireen Manim, who is the Strategy Director of Beauty and Personal Care at Unilever. She's going to be sharing her perspectives, particularly from the region she manages, which is North Africa, Middle East, Turkey and Russia. Hello, Shireen. Great to see you. I'm just going to... Welcome, Shireen. Welcome, Fernando. Welcome, Jane. Now, I'm going to highlight now onto Jane because I'm going to start with the question of the session. Jane, a little bit of a spoiler alert and a giveaway, I think, in the subtitle of your book, Brandsplaining is subtitled Why Marketing is Still Sexist. So when I ask you, Jane, is marketing sexist? I suspect I know what your answer might be.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I guess we set about writing Brandsplaining because we were so often being told, or it was being explained to us rather, that marketing to women was a problem that had been solved. But in the research that we were doing, and we did research kind of day in, day out with women, and we were hearing something quite different. And we felt that there was this sort of complacency had sort of set in about the need for change, and that businesses seemed to feel that they were sorting out gender inequality with corporate feminism, so female networks, assertiveness training, those sorts of initiatives. And in marketing, that corporate feminism seemed to be getting a sort of public voice in femvertising and in fempowerment campaigns, those sort of go girl hashtags and the sort of just you be you sort of stuff that was emerging across the marketing landscape. And both of these are really well-intentioned efforts, obviously, both corporate feminism and fempowerment, but for us, they felt inherently quite problematic because they both, to us, felt like they were asking women to fix the problem in the systems and the structures that worked against them by asking women to change themselves in order to fit them. So businesses were asking women to lean in, brands telling women to dream it, be it, to stop apologizing, to love their bodies, as if women not being motivated enough or not dreaming big enough or women having the good manners to say sorry is the problem. And actually what's been really interesting over the course of the pandemic is that those sorts of answers, I think the sort of fragility and the shallowness of those sorts of answers has sort of risen to the surface and been exposed, you know, and you can see that women have actually been trying to fix and create infrastructures to make up for the fact that those structures don't work for them. So 70% of jobs that are going to get lost over the pandemic will be lost by women. There's still a 28% gender pay gap in creative agencies. So we wrote Brandsplaining in part to show the sort of insufficiency and misguidedness of that fix the women sort of narrative that we felt was quite embedded in fempowerment, and that it's not really a sustainable alternative to traditional marketing to women. But we also wrote it because we wanted to help marketing sort of face into, in a clear-eyed way, what its contribution was to keeping women in their place. So we did a sort of state of the nation study, pulling together all the research we'd done over 15 years, doing a global study in 14 countries. And then we did a content analysis ourselves of websites, advertising, social media feeds, product packaging. And so the book asks marketing to recognize really both the overt and the sort of sneakier ways that marketing sustains kind of old-fashioned ideas about women, ideas that tell women that they're secondary. So sort of, I suppose what we'd be talking about there would be ads that show women, you know, always laughing gleefully in marketing and in advertising, but never actually being funny. The fact that you so rarely see women over 50 in advertising, only 1 in 10 ads shows a woman over 50. The packaging that gives out those coded gender messages, gentle, pleasing, mild for women, and sort of assertive and monochromatic and powerful for men. And then the ads, of course, that sort of tell men that in order to be manly, they have to be powerful and silent and materialistic, and that leaving very little room for women to grow. But most importantly, I guess what we, you know, the reason we wrote it was because, as hopefully it's become clear, we did feel sexism is still quite embedded in marketing, but we wanted to also provide an alternative. And to sort of finish the job that Dove and Unilever and the Unstereotypical Alliance has started, really, to finish that job properly. So I guess there are 5 things that we would ask people to consider. The first of which is just please stop empowering. It's not working, and it's sort of over, really, and it's been exposed as over. Second, try and rid yourselves of the belief, and this is very deep rooted into our psyches, both male and female, that female life is some sort of bell curve with marriage and children at the zenith, and everything as sort of preparation to achieving that, and everything after a sort of descent into greyness. And actually female aspiration from our research is not about that. Actually, most women in most of the countries across the world, the top 3 aspirations about being independent, financially independent, feeling comfortable in your own skin, being able to make your own decisions, not securing a good marriage. That isn't the sort of zenith, as lovely a thing as that might be to achieve. And stop pretending motherhood is something which is a sort of lifestyle, easy breezy choice, which is how marketing presents it, because it isn't. And 40% of working women working mothers in the UK would say they're hanging by a thread. It's a difficult job, and it's challenging, and it requires intelligence and sensitivity to do it well. So stop pretending it's easy and start showing the sort of reality of it and rewarding the reality of it. And stop pretending older women don't exist. You know, almost 3/4 of older women say that they don't see themselves in marketing, and this is commercially negligent. They're vast, wealthy, happy to consume. Third, we'd say listen to women carefully, intently, respectfully. Stop trying to fix women. Look at your own category, look at your own brand, and fix the things that work against women that you're doing. So look at brands like Freedom Mom, Tommy Tippy, Bodyform, Glossier, Starling Bank, Dove, of course, 13 Loon. Fourth, try and challenge those, and Fernando can talk about this much more eloquently and knowledgeably than I can, but challenge those masculine ideas. Those ideas, the traditional ideas of masculinity that get played out. Most men aren't macho anyway, so it seems like a redundant way of doing things. And I guess lastly, what we would say, and something that we've learned since we've launched the book, is that the conversation can become very polarized very quickly. And actually it's really important that people stop blaming each other for the problem. You know, men blaming women, women blaming men, marketing blaming agencies, agencies blaming their clients. You know, everybody's complicit. We're all steeped in this stuff. It's all of these cultural scripts are sort of embedded in our minds. And so given that, it's in each of our gifts really to try and fix it.
What a cracking start to a great conversation, Jane. So many things in there that I want to just briefly pick up on and make sure we come back to in the conversation. But I mean, you end there with the point that this is something that needs to be done in unity. You know, we talk a lot within the Marketing Society about what we can do when we come together as a community, as an industry, how much more we can achieve. And actually, that your last point there is this is about us unifying agencies, clients, coming together to see what we can do. But there's a couple of fascinating points in there about actually, it's not just the rights and wrong of is marketing sexist or not being representative, but you know, fundamentally commercially negligent for us to get it wrong. And I want to come back and forward a little bit today, and we talk about, you know, why this is a problem, not just from a principal point of view, but from a business point of view. So I thought that was great. But all the danger of fempowering, putting the onus on women to fix themselves, really getting closer to the customer and understanding their real aspirations, not just what it's like, and allowing women to be funny. This is very important. We're not just here to laugh at other people's jokes. So many brilliant things in there, Jane, and in a very, very short period of time. And what's obviously brilliant about that is there is a focus, as there has been in a lot of the discussion around this topic, around how women in particular are being underrepresented or misportrayed. But it is about gender equality and understanding both sides and bringing it together. And you've touched on the masculinity question there. So I would like to bring you in, Fernando, because this is your subject, something you feel passionately about. When you're looking at this from the lens of new macho, what's your perspective then? You know, is marketing fundamentally sexist?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's very interesting that we are well into the 21st century and we are still talking about this. And even more interesting that we are talking from brand communication, people that is with the pulse in culture. And we are seeing that brand communication can still be stereotypical, not just about sex, it's about gender, about many things that we are discussing today. And actually at the agency, we made this our mission to eradicate those stereotypes from communication and work alongside the Stereotype Alliance to do so. Particularly, I work in New Macho that try to eradicate the stereotypes affecting men and masculinity, but with the goal to get to a gender balance. So my point of view, if you don't relax the masculine, that is the one that today is dominating the world, we cannot get the feminine to arise and balance naturally. So this is something I learned working for the Axe brand for Unilever. We did a survey back in 2014 in 10 countries from China, Indonesia to Brazil, US. And we talked to 3,500 guys and realized something super important in one chart that says men are performing their masculinity instead of live it. I said, wow. So men are performing their life and not living that. What's going on? Why? What is this happening? So I started to dig in that. And I start to think, okay, what are the stereotypes? How they grow and how men are conditioned. And then I learned that men are conditioned mainly in two ways. One is a very early age, when they are boys, 6, 7 years old, from their parents, not just that, but mom as well, in that they need to behave in certain way if they are mom. They shouldn't cry, so boys don't cry, man up, fight back. And this is something that not only comes from fathers. Many mothers that I talk to them are paying attention to that the life is tough and kids, boys, should be ready for that. So what happened is that these guys, boys, in the beginning, to please their parents, what they do is start behaving in that way and do it that consciously. But with time, when they are teenagers, young adults make that unconscious and go a little bit disconnected without understanding how they really feel in life through what is coming for them. So they repress things. The second conditioning that many men have is that they follow then a path towards be the successful guy, the real man, that in general, in the West, is very narrow and quite materialistic. We tend to value men for what they have and how they look, not much for who they are or what are their values. So we then push those standards and ideas you need to have first. Get laid at a certain age, get that car, that career, grow the ladder, then a bigger car, a bigger house. And then we surround for status that many men can win. And what happened there is that can end up frustrating men. And by frustration, many men could become violent against others or against themselves. Or they can get depressed and detached. That is the other side of the coin. So, and we are talking a lot about that these days. But also, even for men that are achieving the success they expect, or those standards of the expect of success, they could also feel empty. Because if they are living a persona, not who they really are, they can be also feel empty. And if they are disconnected, they don't understand exactly why and what's going on, if they are achieving what they expected. And this is where brand communication comes from, because brand communication sets aspiration for men. We define what a successful man is. We can have a say there. We have been saying that for many, many years. And today we're still defining a successful man as a guy that is emotionless, always in control, tough, fit, wealthy, and not opening that to other qualities. The good thing is that we are talking about that. Men are changing and wants to change. So this will be my points that I think brands can do. The first thing is, I think brands can help men to understand the journey they are going on. That is a journey from performing who they are to really be who they are. You cannot say in a brand and the brand just say, hey, be yourself. You need to tell how do you do that? The second thing that brands can do is to start opening the definition of success, incorporating new values like self-awareness, relationship, values that could be seen as feminine, care, kindness. Then I would encourage brands to stop doing statements about masculinity, about what a man should or shouldn't be. This is not the role of brands. What brands can do is, from their space of the emotional spaces always used to connect with consumers, redefine that and ditch stereotypes from there and help men to go to the next step. The fourth thing I would say to brand is be diverse. That is quite obvious, but it's not just about race, gender, or abilities. Be also diverse in personalities, in values, showing people that could think different. The guy from Kansas, the guy from New York. And then the last thing I would say, of course, don't fall into lazy stereotypes, but also don't create new ones because you are running out of some. And this is what we see a lot. We put a new playbook to contrast the old playbook, and we create a new stereotype that is as harmful as the first one.
Fascinating, Fernando. I mean, you raised so many things that I think a lot of us haven't necessarily thought through in that way. But I think that idea of both for men and women, that the narrowness of what we're portraying, perhaps, and I think this idea of what fundamentally is the role of brands. I mean, as Jane says, it's not to empower people, it's not to define what success is. You know, there are other ways of doing this, and the conversation at least is changing. The way in which we're thinking about this is changing, even if perhaps the way in which marketing is changing has not been as fast as I think most people would like. Just looking at the comments in chat from the 63-year-old who's still sad that we're still discussing this, and laughing at Sheila who is nodding so much with what Jane was saying that her head might fall off. You know, I think this is a really important, and it's complex for brands though. It's complex to get it right, because we need to, you know, work out how we connect with our audience in the right way possible, and to get the right research and to explore things and experiment. I mean, Shireen, both Jane and Fernando have referenced Unilever. You know, it's Unilever as an organisation has been leading the change and the discussion in this area, and particularly in starting on Stereotype Alliance. I'm particularly interested for you in such different markets as well, exploring what's happened. What's your perspective? Is marketing still sexist?
Thanks, Sophie. So let me, before sharing my thoughts, let me wish that everyone hearing us and their loved ones are sound and safe. Yeah, and I'm absolutely delighted to speak on this very interesting topic. And I think it's our role as you know, change makers and business leaders and brands to play a pivotal role in becoming part of the solution rather than contributing to the problem. So let me first start by some staggering facts, and that has really drove the way I have seen that from my own perspective. So while women represent 50% of our total population, however, only 29% contributes to the senior management roles. And the percentage goes way lower, like 20% or even below, if we talk about senior positions like C-suite positions. Another staggering fact, 27 years to attain gender parity in economic participation and opportunities. Some staggering facts feels like we are really slow in driving the change. But why is that? This is the question. Why is that? Because we as women lack competencies, skills, and capabilities? So the answer is absolutely no. The answer, of course, is no. The issue and the real reason lies in the unconscious biases that are well rooted in our society and in our culture. These biases that brings harmful and outdated stereotypes of women and make them really fail to attain or fulfill their full potential. This is something that has been there for so many years, and we need to make that change happening. Yeah, marketing, media, and advertising are even more contributing to the problem, to be very honest with you. Today, if you look, there is a huge gap between women that are featured in media and the women we really are. Even though the role and value of women has seen a massive shift in the last 2 decades, however, advertising has failed to keep up and continue to show an outdated portrait or stereotype for them. Just to give you some of the statistics that we have actually done in Unilever, 40% of women, they do not relate to the women they see in advertising. 80% of women globally, they see or view that advertising really impacts their self-esteem. Big numbers, and this shows the powerful force that can marketing and advertising play in changing perceptions and making the mindset shifts. Brands need to step up and be part of the solution rather than be the problem in addressing different societal tensions where sexism is part of that. They need to do so to stay relevant to the culturally and commercially, by the way. The more they come closer to their consumer, the more they speak the tensions of their consumers, the more they become relevant in today's culture and in today's world. Research proved that millennials do shift brands to support brands with cause and brand with purpose. This is a proven fact. And for sexism, my point of view and my perspective in that, it is a lethal weapon, not only on women, but to the whole society and to the whole economy. A recent UN study just showed us that more than thousands of working days are being lost every day due to sexism. Sexism holds employees back and channel them in wrong roles, bases some unconscious biases, which accordingly we miss out on their full potential, whether being women or men, and accordingly lose a real opportunity in the society and the whole economy.
It's fantastic to hear your passion for this, Shireen, as well, because I think this is, you know, we talk this year, our Marketing Society theme this year is it's the year of the change makers, because we believe that marketeers have the power to shape change positively, economically and in society, but that actually it's the marketeers who want to make that happen, who need to drive it forward. So hearing that kind of passion is incredible. I think there's some very important points in there as well about this being something around making everything as relevant as possible, commercially and culturally, the phrase you used there, you know, and really classic understanding our audience and getting as close as possible to that. But how hard that is because of the way things are currently structured and the challenges. So all kinds of questions in there, which I'm sure we'll get onto about how we do something about that, what the approach is. I think there's some really interesting conversations going on in the chat as well that I want to reflect before I come back to that. One question from the audience about what our audience gender makeup is. Because I know when we had a recent event talking about Wonder Women and Giles Lurie's book, and he's asked the question there were more women than men in the audience. Just so you know, I think there's about a 70-30 split with more women than men in the audience today. Hello, everybody. Let's work together to make this happen. And another point from Giles, which I think is absolutely right, and I'm just about to come on to talk about this. When we think about marketing, one of the reasons I love it as an industry, and one of the reasons I think it's an incredibly exciting industry and profession to be in, is because it has the power to shape businesses and change and what can go on. But that encompasses every single part of the marketing mix, not just the communications. When we start talking about sexism, I think we focus particularly on advertising because that's the most obvious representation of it. But there's all kinds of questions which I know Shireen, you will have looked at, and everybody will have looked at in terms of, you know, right back at defining what the product is, the pricing, everything around it when we think about the marketing mix. Jane, I want to come on to ask a related question of you around this. It's quite a broad one, but why do you think marketing matters? And how much responsibility do you think it has to shape the future?
I mean, I think marketing, because I mean, if you think about the amount of money that is spent producing and presenting to the target audience what they're supposed to be like, what their sort of what ideals are set out to them. I mean, marketing plays a huge contribution to the broader cultural script, in the same way as Shireen says, you know, TV, movies, all of these, you know, books, all of these sort of scripts that get written for women. And marketing is probably the one that is probably the most potent in some ways, because so many marketing messages are consumed on a daily basis. So I think marketing has a huge contribution to play in shifting the way women get presented, and in changing the way all of us think and feel about what women are. I mean, I think there is a sort of, there's this sort of false argument that gets made, which is, well, marketing has to just reflect the way things are, rather than try and change the way things are. In reality, marketing is a long way behind the way women are even now, right now, today. So even just catching up would be good, rather than, I don't think anybody's saying marketing has to go miles ahead of where women are. Actually, marketing has got quite a long way to go to catch up, because the aspirations that marketing assumes women have are not the aspirations women actually have. And the sort of subtext of the conversations that brands have with women assumes a relationship which doesn't exist, which is a sort of either a sort of masterful voice saying this is what you should be, or a patronly voice saying we sponsor you, come on, you're wonderful. And actually marketing needs to play the role as kind of brand as servant, if you like, and making itself useful to women who are busy getting on with living out their aspirations, and they're not seeing them in the way that brands present women. So there's quite a big shift that needs to happen in marketing, even just to catch up with where women are. And women are hugely resourceful. The sort of amazing success of direct-to-consumer brands, particularly, I guess, escalated by the pandemic, but direct-to-consumer brands who are able to sort of, I guess, reinvent categories and really rethink categories and the way categories work for women from a product level right up to female presentation, are sort of showing the way, I guess, and shining a light on just how behind the curve many brands are, many of the establishment brands are.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of product design and things like that, I think the book Invisible Women as well also has reminded all of us of quite how inaccurate things can be, and how important research and understanding is. But that perspective there, Jane, which is about the role, almost the role marketeers have to be ahead rather than reflecting, but also to at least get there in the first place. You know, it's a real challenge, isn't it? Shireen, I know you've been looking at this and battling it, and, you know, from a strategy perspective, you know, why does marketing matter then, and what's our responsibility in terms of shaping the future as marketeers for you?
So I totally agree with Jane on how we can collectively drive the efforts to change the narrative and change the perception. So I will talk as a woman leader and a marketeer in one of the largest advertisers worldwide. We believe that we do have a role in influencing perception, and a very strong role in actually addressing tensions like sexism and all that. So I'll give you like 2 examples of how Unilever believe that with the collaboration and the right action, we can see the change and make the change. So one of the initiatives that we have done in Unilever in our region is that Unilever has become a founder member in the Unstereotype Alliance that is launched by the UN Women. Yeah, this is basically an industry-led initiative convened by the UN Women that unites industry leaders, decision makers, and creatives to end all the harmful stereotypes for all genders in advertising. This is an initiative where all collaborations, all decision makers, industry leaders are coming together to really end this harmful stereotypes for both men and women in advertising, basis the fact how advertising can play a powerful force in changing perceptions. So this is, again, and I will actually pick the question in the chat box of why we are so, because it's actually leading that in silo. It's all about coming together. It's all about, you know, uniting with the different industry leaders actually to make that change. Yeah. And second thing I would like.
Oh, we're losing you a little bit, Shireen. There's a little bit of delay.
To share.
Shireen, we've lost
that
you.
Unilever in.
Shireen, I think there's a bit of a delay on the line there. So I'm just going to wait for the Wi-Fi to come back. I think
yeah. Can you hear me now, Sophie?
Better. Yeah, great. Your second point. I wouldn't be a Zoom call without a little bit of Wi-Fi interference.
No, this has got to happen. It's got to happen.
I'm just going to pick up, Shireen, on that first point, which is a really important one, and answering perhaps a little bit of Liesel's frustration. You know, we know there's work to do, we want to do, we agree we want change. Why isn't it happening? And Shireen, your point is better things. Hiya. Shireen, I was just saying, you were saying better things can happen and we can create change when we come together. So the very thought
exactly.
of unity and bringing everybody together, it will make a huge difference, right?
Yeah, and really another thing is about driving inclusivity and breaking any stereotypes. So I wanted to just share with the audience that we have just recently communicated our vision as beauty and personal care division in Unilever, positive in beauty. Yeah, and we had a commitment.
It's a fantastic new vision.
To
Shireen, I'm going to push next to
normal communication.
I'm so sorry, Shireen, we're just losing you a tiny bit, but that new vision from Unilever is fascinating. So let's come back to that when the Wi-Fi is behaving itself a little bit more, because I think it's so important. And what I think is great about this conversation, and what I want to make sure we're doing is, you know, at the Marketing Society, we don't just want to be a talking shop going, hey, this should happen, but some practical, tangible, what do we do about things to make it better, to make us better at our jobs, to make the world better, whatever we want to do. So some thoughts there in terms of bringing people together and uniting to do more, and having a clear vision, as Unilever has just expressed itself in terms of a vision for change. Fernando, can I ask you, for people listening who actually work for different brands, what's your advice to them, or what do you think they could do to help in terms of creating a more inclusive change and making things different? Practical suggestions for those who are working on brands at the moment.
Yeah, certainly they need to do something, because men as women don't feel represented by brands in the UK, Mexico, or the US countries we work on. So men are trapped between the old and the new. This is what and one of the things we can do to unlock that is by, as I said before, redefining what success is. So in the way we are portraying the successful man, from our point of view, is as harmful as the way the industry was portraying beauty for women in the past, before the campaign of Real Beauty. So there is something that is engraved in the industry and is engraved in people. So we did a survey in 2000 with 2,000 men and women in the UK and in the US, and we saw that still the beliefs of what makes a man successful is engraved in younger generations. So 40% of millennials would agree that they should crack under pressure. And this is a pressure that goes man to man. Women, only 14% believe so. So the pressure is coming from there. So one thing that the industry can do is expand this successful portrayal. The other maybe is less engaging in where men are today, mirrored then, because they are changing, and start helping to design something where they can fit, how the other side looks like, how they can go there. And we did something as an example with Ruffles in Mexico, that is a PepsiCo snack. We have their emotional space, how they connect to brands is through attraction. And if you go to Mexico today, there is a very old macho culture. So for them, attraction is a conquering game. But what we did is transform this conquering game into attractive aspirational vision of that attraction is a connection game between equals, men and women in the same place. And men want to go there, women also. And then when you act like that, you don't get any backlash on the communication. You can change the whole positioning for the brand, talk about it, make your point of view, but as you are helping the people to move where they want to go, they embrace that and feel that liberating.
To open it up, and that, you know, that's that vision of, you know, men being trapped between the old and the new is a, you know, a powerfully emotional image when you think about it like that. So unlocking and liberating people by making this happen. So useful example there, Fernando, of one particular brand. It's always helpful for us to share stories and examples of people who are trying to get things right, getting things right, and how it's working, because that inspires the rest of us. Jane, are there any brands you think are getting it right at the moment? Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this sort of shift from sort of brand as, you know, the brand sort of looking at the female audience through the male gaze, which is the sort of traditional sort of sexist objectification of women, to where we are now, which is sort of the male glance, which is basically sort of saying, oh yeah, we better sort this thing out, and people keep complaining about sexism, and sort of vaguely address the issue in quite a sort of shallow and superficial way, to a sort of new era of marketing where brands are kind of properly understanding in a very deep way what it is that women need in the category effectively. So and that means being incredibly sort of open in questioning and in understanding and in listening. And the brands that seem to have done that really well kind of recently, I guess, I think brands like Bumble, you know, going into the dating market, you know, where really kind of heard the fact that women found the category very predatory, found it quite frightening to be in. And developed a sort of product that put them in charge of the service, so that they could use it the way they wanted to use it and get what they wanted out of it. And it's obviously been amazingly sort of successful as a consequence. And then brands like Starling Bank, which we think are really interesting, you know, Anne Boden going into First Bank that had been launched for 300 years or something crazy, but kind of going into a category where the brands tended to assume they were in charge of the customer, and certainly in charge of the customer's money, and sort of entirely reversing that relationship and feeling like it was properly sort of in service of the customer. And a lot of her original research was done with female customers. And then I guess brands like Freedom Mom we think are really interesting because they develop incredibly helpful and useful products for women postpartum and when they're breastfeeding, and then present a much more sort of accurate understanding of the challenges and the sort of glories of early motherhood, which means that women don't feel, when they see marketing that targets them around motherhood, they don't feel like failures. You know, they feel like they're kind of properly seen and properly understood. And I think we would say brands like Dove continue to do really incredible work at you know, properly trying to look at the category, look at beauty, look at what it does that isn't right, that feels like it's antithetical to the way that women want to see themselves, and then trying to genuinely sort of tackle that, I guess. So I mean, there are lots of brands out there doing interesting things. 13 Lune is really interesting, you know, a brand that gives a platform to Black and brown founders, you know, in the beauty category, where often they find it really hard to, people kind of find it really hard to get sort of coverage because of the white gaze, if you like, in female magazines and female other kind of marketing channels. So lots of brands doing lots of interesting things, but all of them, you know, really genuinely challenging the categories that they're operating within. But more importantly, seem to have really listened. You know, even brands like Glossier, you know, starting out by just doing that really intense listening on social media, and then creating brands and products out of what they're hearing, rather than seeking to serve their own needs, I guess, and trying to get women to need what they were offering.
So going back to your idea earlier about being servant marketers, you know, that
yes,
listening and thinking about it all. Shireen, there's a lovely Unilever alumni comment in chat about what Unilever have done to get it right. Any other perspectives on which brands you think are leading the way at the moment?
Yeah, so truly and honestly, Dove is really changing the narrative massively. It's breaking the stereotype of what beauty should be and shouldn't be. It's about inclusive beauty. It's about being beautiful in your own skin, yeah, in your own way. And there is no certain definition imposed by us, media around us, a shape of beauty or a certain type of beauty.
Yeah, we're losing a little bit again, but I think that point about there being no certain definition and no shapes coming up time and again, and Fernando, you made a great point about us not being lazy about it. You know, it is tougher than ever to be a great marketer, and that's partly because we can't be lazy. We can't just take certain definitions. We need to listen and get it right. And I think there's some fantastic examples like Dove, and I think there's a few examples coming out in the chat and questions as well of brands who are spearheading and leading the way. And I would say this, wouldn't I? But I think it's very important for anybody in marketing to have those different perspectives and make sure, you know, that if you're in if you're in FMCG, you're still learning from the great marketing in the world of finance. You know, if we can learn and get ideas from each other, and that's a great way of doing it. And I think not being shy of standing up for what you believe, which is certainly something we've seen a lot from Unilever recently. So thank you for that, Shireen. I'm very conscious. I've got tons more questions for you guys, and I want to keep talking about this. And there's a couple of questions also coming up from the audience. So I want to just make sure I'm pulling those out. Fernando, there's a question for you on chat. So I'm going to on the Q&A. So let me just pull that out. 1 second. And I think there's an interesting one for all the panel, actually, before I ask you that, Fernando. There's an anonymous attendee who hasn't put their name on this, who's asking you all to help with this. Do you have any suggestions on how to drive diversity if your customers are overwhelmingly male? And it's from someone who works in B2B marketing, which we haven't talked about enough today, and which is always very interesting, in the telecoms industry. The majority of our customers are white middle-aged males. We fall into stereotypes in our marketing activity, e.g. utilising sports connections. So does anybody want to give a perspective on what that person should be doing to make a change? I think
that, I mean, building the business case is very important, isn't it? Is the first thing that has to be done, which is, you know, if currently your audience is overwhelmingly one gender and you feel you want to reach out to, or you want to encourage your own company to reach out to another gender, then there is a requirement to build the business case as to why that might be a good idea. But if you look at, there are lots of categories that we're very, very stuck. And I guess my experience is much more at the consumer end, but, you know, financial services, technology, cars, alcohol, all massively sort of steeped and oversteered towards the male audience. And actually the brands that have done a really good job of balancing their brand, making their brand, you know, sort of bilingual brand, a brand that is able to speak to both men and to women, have had huge success. I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds really opportunistic, and I don't mean it to, but our second book is about exactly that, which is how do you get brands that are targeting men to reach out to women without frightening everybody in your company, you know, because there's always, we used to always hear, you know, oh God, you're going to make the brand all soft, you know, and pink and fluffy, you know, as if that's the sort of default answer to reaching out to women. But there are lots of categories that have been actually transformed by accommodating different ways of speaking to the target audience, bringing women into the conversation without alienating their current customers.
Sorry, Fernando.
A very short extra story on what Shane said. So, we started talking about that. So consumers, wants, needs, and expectations now are changing faster than ever. So, and the pandemic accelerated that. Therefore, if we only use data to take decisions, and we are saying all of our consumers are men, when they are men today, but if we have one foot on the past, that is where data sits, because it's always historical, and one foot on the future, on what is the world we want to design, listening to things like Shane saying that women want in the financial independency, maybe this is where we need to be. Yeah.
And that is, again, you know, one of the big challenges for marketers is that we need to be, you know, a few steps ahead and shaping the future ourselves, which requires, you know, courage and risk and all, you know, and playing with all that as well. I also think, and the points you were making there, Jane, and it's come up a few times in this call, sometimes it isn't just about connecting properly with our audience and our customer. It's about making sure that internally we can present the right case, and, you know, the influence we have as marketers to connect people internally is critical. Many great questions.
Just one point, just to add on what Jane and Fernando is saying. So I think if we didn't move fast, we will become outdated, because consumers has massively shifted. Yeah, and they are requesting us as brands and businesses to stand for something and to become a force for good, to really address real societal problems that we live in every day. So they are requesting change. And I think if we didn't respond very swiftly and very fast, we'll become outdated and we'll be speaking to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody who has teenage children and who talks to them about how they're responding to things, as I do, you know, is highly aware of how completely out of date our thinking is, and told that on a regular basis. We are running out of time and there are so many amazing questions, and this has gone so fast already. But what I'm going to ask each of you to do, please, is one sentence, one thought, one final bit of advice for those who are listening who believe that there is a risk of sexism in their marketing, any part of the marketing mix. What's your one piece of advice from each of you to help them be positive change makers if that's what they want to be? Shireen, what would you say?
So definitely my piece of advice would be focusing on women empowerment, the 50% of our population and 50% of our human resources and capacity. This is a massive enabler to economic growth and sustainable human development. And simply for everyone hearing us today, start by yourself. Don't allow your limiting beliefs to stand between you and your ambition and dreams. Become a role model to unstereotype the negative and diminished conceptions about women, and really be the force for good to enable every woman and man in your workplace. And please use marketing. Be the change maker and be the change catalyst. Use marketing and advertising to drive change in perception and society norms.
I'm very glad the Wi-Fi held up for that particular call to action and cri de coeur there, Shireen. That's fantastic. Fernando, one thing for everybody listening, what would you give them as a takeaway? I
like what Gary Combs said the other day from Gillette, that he said, we have a point of view and then I have a problem, and took distance and see what is our real intention by doing what we are doing. And I would add to that, if you are doing something and you don't know if it's going to be sexist, think on the intention that you have. And the other thing I would think is, do you have the credentials? Your brand has the credentials to have a point of view in that space or not? Because that could create a backlash.
Yeah, and making sure you have the the right for it all. Yes, and great reference. So for those who missed it, our annual lecturer, Gary Coombe, looking at the anatomy of a very classic brand pivot, and raising some of these questions and the challenges for marketers going through that last week as well. Jane, one final takeaway for everybody here. What would you advise?
I think we would probably say that the starting point is smashing this idea of the bell curve, that's what female life is about, because even though people sort of ostensibly agree with that, a lot of it still lurks underneath the way that marketing operates, the way it behaves, and the assumptions that get played out. So really kind of smashing that bell curve, looking at the very real sort of data around what it is that women aspire to, and why that kind of shape of female life is completely redundant now. And I think if people can do that, if they can dismantle that bit of that thing that's in their brains, that's deeply embedded in their psyches, that's got to be the sort of starting point for a very different sort of conversation with women through marketing.
It's just so unfair to not have more time to talk about this. I'm so desperate to carry on the conversation. At the heart of what we do at the Marketing Society, we love bringing people together to have these conversations, to make these connections, to keep the debate moving. So everybody listening, do connect with everybody on the panel today. If you've got more to say, we will try and make sure we follow up with some answers and some notes in the email that will be the follow-up call from this. If you're a Marketing Society member on our coffee house, come and join the conversation there, add your points of view. There is going to be a little poll coming up. Tell us what you think. It'll only take 2 seconds. Don't drop off and go and do your emails for a second. Do just tell us how you found it. We love to hear from you. We love your feedback. Answer that poll or come and connect with me, sophie@marketingsociety.com, and tell me what you thought of today, or talk about it on the coffee house as well. And just very, very quickly, a couple of things coming up for you all, so you don't miss it. There are some fantastic things coming from the Marketing Society that I'd like to tell you about. First and importantly, if you would like to feel uplifted, do keep joining our Uplifters series, which are designed to energize and help you through these grueling times. The one on the 20th of April is a great one if you're interested in thinking about your career and whether it's linear or squiggly, as we've got the great Helen Tupper, who's the founder and CEO of Amazing If, giving us 5 skills to succeed. So a very practical careers one. Do come and join us for that. Don't miss our digital day in Scotland, which is actually so packed full of content. We've had to do it over 2 days. So it's streaming live to every single member and everybody who wants to join. 21st and 22nd of April, some fantastic conversations about the cookieless world, about digital transformation. Some great speakers. Do join us. Lots of great things coming up. Keep an eye out on LinkedIn, on Twitter for all the events we've got, and check your emails. There'll be one coming shortly, which will summarize some of the conversation we've had today. Thank you to all our audience for joining us, for your feedback, your comments, and for thinking and talking to us all. A huge thank you to Jane, to Fernando and Shireen for taking your time and giving us so many insights and having such a candid conversation today. It's been terrific. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe, stay curious. We will see you all soon. Bye-bye.